Ethan Cole never forgot the night his home stopped feeling safe. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, just him, a lukewarm cup of coffee, and the quiet comfort of his living room, but that fragile peace shattered the instant he heard footsteps upstairs. His heart slammed against his ribs because nobody else was supposed to be home. At first he thought it must be his imagination, the creak of old wood settling, until he heard the distinct shuffle of shoes across his bedroom floor. Grabbing the heaviest thing he could find, a steel flashlight, he crept up the staircase one careful step at a time, each creak of wood sounding like a gunshot in the silence. At the top of the landing, the sight that greeted him turned his blood cold. A tall, wiry teenage boy was rifling through his dresser drawers, pulling out papers, coins, and socks like he owned the place. When the boy finally looked up, his face went pale for a split second, but then curled into a smug grin. "You can't do anything," he said with a confidence that didn't belong to someone caught red-handed. "My mom runs the HOA. I can go wherever I want." Ethan blinked in disbelief, fury bubbling up inside him. A kid had broken into his house, and his excuse was that his mother's neighborhood authority gave him a free pass. Ethan's voice came out in a low growl. "Get out of my house." But Tyler Hensley didn't budge. Instead, he leaned against the dresser like it was his bedroom, testing Ethan's patience. So Ethan pulled out his phone, dialed 911 in full view, and warned, "You've got 30 seconds before the cops arrive." Tyler smirked, almost amused, and muttered, "They won't do a thing. Mom says people like you don't matter." Minutes later, flashing lights painted the walls, and officers stormed in. Tyler's smirk finally cracked when handcuffs clicked around his wrists, though he still shouted about his mother's power as they dragged him out the door. The next morning, Ethan's door rattled under sharp, impatient knocking. He already knew who it was before he opened it. Margaret Hensley, Tyler's mother, the iron-fisted HOA president, stood on his porch with her hair perfectly styled, sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy sky, and rage radiating off her in waves. "You had no right to call the police on my son," she hissed before he could even speak. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Ethan, still groggy, stared at her with growing irritation. "Yeah, you're the woman whose son broke into my house." Margaret's nostrils flared. "He wasn't breaking in. He was inspecting. As HOA president, I have the authority to let my family check for violations." Ethan nearly laughed. "Violations in my bedroom drawers?" She ignored the jab and shoved a stack of papers in his face. "You'll regret this. I'll fine you, blacklist. You make sure you can't sell this house. My son doesn't belong in a jail cell. He belongs here, protected by me. You're nothing but a troublemaker." Ethan drew in a deep breath, fighting the urge to slam the door, but instead answered with calm steel. "The police didn't arrest him because of me. They arrested him because he broke the law. Your HOA badge doesn't change that." For the first time, Margaret's face cracked. Shock flickered there, quickly replaced with seething anger. She stormed off, but Ethan noticed her SUV parked. Across the street all day, her eyes hidden behind tinted windows, phone glued to her ear. By that evening, retaliation had begun. A letter taped to his mailbox declaring his lawn non-compliant, another accusing him of misplacing his garbage, cans and more that followed in quick succession. Within 48 hours, Ethan had been slapped with 6 violations, each more absurd than the last. But instead of breaking, Ethan got smarter. He photographed everything, scanned each letter, and recorded every heated exchange. Margaret thought she was burying him in paper. In reality, she was digging her own grave. A week later, the neighborhood's spell of silence finally cracked. While trimming his hedges, Ethan overheard Margaret bragging loudly to a neighbor. "The HOA board does what I say. That man won't last 6 months here. Either he pays or he leaves." That was Ethan's breaking point. It explained why the Harper's never opened their blinds, while the elderly couple on the corner endured her scolding about weeds without complaint. Margaret hadn't just weaponized the HOA against him. She had been running the entire neighborhood like a private kingdom, bullying anyone who dared resist. But Ethan wasn't like the others. He had already contacted the detective handling Tyler's case, who encouraged him to keep building a file. Then fate handed him the perfect piece of evidence. Tyler was caught again, this time sneaking into the Garcias' garage. The security footage showed him pocketing tools before darting out like a common thief. The Garcias, tired of her intimidation, marched the video straight to the police. Now it wasn't Ethan's word against Margaret's. It was a pattern. Soon, officers were at Ethan's door, taking statements and assuring him the law was tightening its grip. "Multiple charges," one officer said. "Breaking and entering, theft, harassment. The HOA president might think she runs this street, but the law doesn't answer to her." For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a rush of satisfaction. Margaret's empire of fear was crumbling, brick by brick, and her son's arrogance had lit the fuse. But he also knew people like Margaret rarely went down quietly. His prediction proved right. One afternoon, her SUV idled in front of Ethan's house as usual, but this time Ethan didn't bother closing his curtains. He knew something she didn't. Squad cars were already circling the block. At mid-afternoon, officers marched up to her door with grim determination. Seconds later, her shrieks pierced the air. "This is harassment! You can't do this! I am the HOA!" But authority means little when handcuffs wait. Tyler was dragged out first, still mouthing off about fairness, then Margaret herself, clutching a folder of HOA documents like they were holy scripture. "These papers give me rights," she screamed. But the officers ignored her and read the charges aloud: harassment, intimidation, obstruction, accessory to burglary. Curtains across the street fluttered, doors opened, and for the first time, neighbors stepped outside. The spell had broken. Mrs. Garcia whispered, "Finally," with tears in her eyes. Others murmured relief, years of fear melting away as they watched Margaret, once untouchable, reduced to just another resident in cuffs. Even as she threatened lawsuits and revenge, the image of her as the all-powerful HOA queen was gone forever. The police cars rolled away, and the neighborhood felt different, lighter, freer. Neighbors approached Ethan, shaking his hand, thanking him for standing up when nobody else dared. That night, the detective called with the news Ethan had been waiting for. Tyler was in custody, Margaret faced multiple charges, and she wouldn't be running any HOA for a very long time. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a smile breaking through at last. His home was his sanctuary again, his street no longer ruled by intimidation. Margaret had once declared, "My mom runs the HOA. I can do whatever I want." But the truth had finally spoken louder. "No, you can't."